Imagine a game that lets you play as Han Solo, young and in his youth, barely even a petty criminal, let alone the dashing and daring smuggler we would come to love. Imagine jumping into your ship, booting up the hyperdrive, and jumping through the glorious blue flashing lights of hyperspace to find yourself on a planet you've known since you were a child. Talk with the Sand People and the Hutt Cartel, to go to Canto Bight or Kimchi City, to live and breathe and walk in the Star Wars universe, a galaxy that's been so far away for so long. Travelling it like this should feel like coming home. What you're given is an overpriced and overhyped role-playing game with some redeeming qualities. Make no mistake, Star Wars Outlaws is a fun game. In my nearly 20 plus hours, I've been thrilled to race away from the Empire on a speeder, sneak into a Crimson Dawn hideout, and blast my way through an Imperial base. It's got all the necessary mechanics that a good Star Wars smuggling outlaw role-playing game should have. Unfortunately, the game has been developed by Ubisoft. And what could have been an amazing, award-winning, narratively fantastic new entry into Star Wars is instead somewhat bland and frankly quite repetitive, a typical Ubisoft type. That doesn't mean you can't enjoy it, just don't spend nearly £100 to do so. I'll be the first to say I'm usually the one who gets on these 3-day early access deals and cool-looking trailers that make me think, you know what, maybe this game's worth it. And in all honesty, I've really enjoyed my time playing Outlaws. In fairness, I knew what I was getting into with Ubisoft. And give me all that baloney about how it comes from one of their better studios, but a rose by any other name would smell just as sweet, and a game by Ubisoft is always going to verge on amazing, fall into the same old typical tropes. Before I really get into what was good and what was bad, let me tell you a little bit about the game. The story follows Kay Vess, a young outlaw from Canto Bight who takes a contract that gets into trouble with a brand new cartel known as Zerek Besh. Kay is forced to go on the run and later pulled into a scheme to rob Zerek Besh of their 153 million credits. As narratives go, it's not that interesting, and if I'm honest, I'm mostly there for the cute creature. His name is Nyx, and by the way, he is fucking adorable. Kay isn't the most interesting protagonist, though she's played well by her voice actress, Humberly Gonzalez from Netflix's Ginny and Georgia, who's thankfully mainly due to the long length of the game given ample opportunity to showcase her acting prowess, which she clearly has. Now let's step into what's good about the game. Alongside the fantastic actress in the lead, there are numerous talents who perform exceptionally admirable considering they must surely know how much criticism they're probably going to receive. I mean, I'm not exactly talking about the same response to Abby's voice actress in The Last of Us Part 2. But, well, Star Wars fans being what they are, and by that I merely refer to the small minority who are sexist, racist, fat and lonely little incels whose idea of progress is the big whopper coming back, this time with an extra patty, it's likely they're going to receive a small amount of abuse for their role in this somewhat underwhelming game. Ubisoft does one thing really well with games, and that shows from the get-go. They render beautiful and cinematically astounding environments. Every single planet is magnificent. Every environment is sublime. There is such detail in the way they have painted this world with its architecture and its characters. From the citizens who crawl around the hive of scum and villainy that is Mos Eisley to the nebula in orbit around Tashara, there is not a single place you visit in this game that has me feeling any sort of visual ick. The cartel system is done well. Not only do the various criminal organisations have unique designs, tactics and units, but they also have a reputation system which feels significant. You can find yourself getting better offer on goods, new cosmetics which provide you with better abilities, and they truly influence gameplay. When you get in bad, it is bad. Forget about trading, forget about associating, forget about feeling safe on the streets. The same system applies quite well with the Empire's Wanted system, which escalates nicely. At a low level, ground troops and stormtroopers will hunt you down, but at the highest, death troopers will be sent to eviscerate you. The same applies for ground and space wanted levels, with each increase adding to its own increment of Empire ships or Imperial troops coming after you. Now onto the bad, and unfortunately there is a decent amount of it. I'll say from the get-go, I've always been a defender of this game. Outlaws isn't worth nearly £100, at best it's worth 50. and I'm being generous there. It clearly has the potential to be a Game of the Year release, but is instead some partially completed rendering of what could be a great Star Wars game. And if you're okay settling for good, then good, because that's what you'll get. But I think they could have done a lot better. Playing on normal difficulty, it's easy to see that combat isn't supposed to feel challenging, except it should feel challenging when you're being overwhelmed and overrun by Imperial ships. Also, Kay's ability to naturally pilot a ship after spending all of 2 minutes in the cockpit is just beyond the realms of believability. Granted, the same can be said for Han Solo and Rey, who both enter into the cockpit and immediately seem to have mastery of their environment. But is it feels strange for a game to so easily allow you to dominate in space combat when you've only really had about 2 minutes of experience. Combat itself is not amazing. You're essentially given 2 choices of weapons and 1 choice of ship, which you can never change. This feels incredibly limiting when you've got a universe filled with fictional ships with their own unique pros and cons. The Trailblazer, it isn't even that cool looking. To me, it reminds me of the RV of ships. Further, space doesn't feel like there's much to do beyond the visual element. Whilst you can bask at the visual spectacles in space, there's very little out there to actually do. And while you can have cool looking landings, it's not exactly seamless as it was advertised to be. There is definitely a loading screen. And while in space, you're essentially completing quite mundane and uninteresting tasks for various criminal organizations, and none of them paying particularly well. This segues into another problem. What are you supposed to do with all those credits? It is nice to buy upgrades and cool looking outfits, but this is a galaxy far, far away. At least let you buy a home, new ship parts, new ships. Look at No Man's Sky, look at Star Citizen. It's not a concept that's gone down poorly. Sometimes it feels like credits purely exist to advance you within the very narrow and selective areas which progress you through the narrative, getting better weapons and better gear, so that by the time you reach that final level, you've advanced to a level within your character which doesn't go via the same typical XP earning experience. A slight deviation, which isn't really worth the deviation. Again, don't get me wrong, the abilities you earn and the way you progress through them are very original compared to the usual fighting, completing tasks until you get enough experience points to level up. However, you don't get many opportunities to mix and match various abilities, as most combat situations come down to either A, running away, or B, shooting furiously while sliding and front rolling between cover points. Ubisoft does not have it down when it comes to combat. Definitely not for Star Wars. When we've seen films where a single blaster shot takes down a stormtrooper, it feels like a break from canon when it takes a full reload to me to put down an unarmed Imperial technician or officer. The modifications do add a nice little shift to combat, especially when you go from having a single shot rifle to a pistol that can shoot multiple blasts at once. But it's not enough. When you're a few hours into the game, your options do start to feel limited. Stealth is also limiting at times. There are generally a numerous number of ways to approach an incursion into an enemy base, but the stealth mechanics are copied and pasted from pretty much every Assassin's Creed game ever made. And if you're caught, then you better be quick on the trigger, because if you don't shoot these guys quickly enough, the whole base will find out where you are without a single word being uttered. It's very clear to me that this game has a lot of potential. And if it was still in development, I might have some hope that Ubisoft could redeem this and make it a great game. It could be fantastic. It could have been the next great pinnacle of Star Wars gaming. But it isn't. It's not. It's released. And Ubisoft have released it, knowing full well that they're reliable for creating the mid-standard for gaming. But it's not. And Ubisoft have released this game knowing it's at the mid-standard for gaming, and it could have been way better. So is Star Wars Outlaws enjoyable? Yes, there is plenty about the game that I've enjoyed. I've enjoyed sneaking around, breaking into places and performing tasks for criminal organizations without seeing a single lightsaber within 100,000 light years. I've enjoyed what is good about the game, and for most, this will not be possible. because we have such high expectations for Star Wars. Unfortunately, Star Wars is owned by a company that doesn't know what to do with its own IP, and that's been a case for a long time, as evidenced since The Force Awakens. The best days of the galaxy far, far away are long behind us. But that doesn't mean we can't enjoy the little things that get dropped every now and again. Outlaws isn't a meal prepped at a Michelin-star restaurant. It's the corner shop grub that fills you up and makes you feel good for a little while, before it all gets dropped down the toilet and forgotten about. Sadly, it's probably not going to get much better from here on out, unless you enjoy Souls-like games, in which case the next Jedi game, whenever it releases, will probably be worth your wait. But in the meantime, if you're looking for a 6.5 to a 7 game out of 10, then Outlaws might be something for you to pick up on sale. Thanks for watching, and thanks for listening.